Well, for more on this, Sami Nader joins us live from Beirut. Sami, how significant is this deal for Libya, and how difficult is it going to be to successfully implement, do you think?
The deal is very difficult to be signed. It's true that it has been in the making, and the agreement was sealed in Rome last week. However, the challenges are very high, and the divisions inside the Libya political establishment are so many. So now the question, even if this government is formed and the deal is signed, too many factions will still oppose it. And the worst scenario could be that we end up with 3 governments instead of 2, because the 2 others of Tobruk and Tripoli would not resign totally. So I think that the internal divisions are so many, and there is still a long way to go. And one has to keep in mind that the more the divisions among the political factions, the greater are the opportunity for Daesh or ISIS that is moving at a very rapid pace in the region of Sirte, that is replacing Raqqa as the capital of the ISIS movement. And the stakes are furthermore so high because it could pose a major threat to neighboring countries where the stability is at risk, and namely Egypt. This is why this agreement gathered far more support from regional and international power than from inside the Libyan political establishment.
Okay, Sami, stay with us if that's okay, because there's another important story coming out of North Africa today. It's been exactly 5 years since a vegetable salesman set himself on fire. Weeks of protests followed. Tunisia's president stepped down, and protests in the region led to what would become known as the Arab Spring. Kilmeny Ducard reports.
Mohamed Bouazizi was on his way to work, trying to earn a day's wage by selling produce to support his family of 8. But a policewoman confiscated his unlicensed cart and spouted insults at him. Later that day, Bouazizi, who was 26, would douse himself with petrol and set himself on fire. His suicide rallied Tunisians. Weeks of protests followed. Angered Tunisians demanded an end to corruption and called for President Zine El Abidine Ben Ali to end his 23-year rule. Not long after, in a hospital bed, the young man who caused the protests would die. The president pictured here at his side. Ben Ali would later step down, while people in other countries in the Arab world stood up. Egyptians sought to overthrow their president, Hosni Mubarak.
I have asked the government to hand in their resignations today, and I will appoint a government tomorrow with clear and precise instructions.
Protests rang out in Yemen. In Libya, anti-government demonstrations in the city of Benghazi called for a day of rage, rallying against Muammar Gaddafi's 42-year rule. It led to Gaddafi's death and a civil war. And then there was Syria. Protesters demanded that Bashar al-Assad had to go. The Arab Spring brought with it hope, but also disappointment. This is Tunisia today. On the surface, it doesn't seem like much has changed. A man a lot like Bouazizi is selling fruits and vegetables on the streets.
5 or 6 years ago, I was a high school student. I stopped my studies and tried my chance in trade. As you can see, I said to myself, at least someone makes a living and doesn't stay unemployed. The business was doing well in the beginning, but the revolution was not helpful. Everything stopped. There was nothing new. On the contrary, things got worse.
Sami questions if life would have been better if the revolution never happened. Tunisia has seen a new era of democracy. Its citizens are dealing with poverty, violence, and economic hardship. 5 years after the birth of the Arab Spring, ordinary Tunisians are still trying to find their feet. Kilmeny Ducard, TRT World.